Well, hello, nephew.
Hi, Auntie.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so glad to see you, and thank you for making it out into the Zoom tonight because I just want to make sure I touch base with all of my nieces and nephews, and you next on the list.
Okay.
And so this whole idea came to me. God gives me visions that I sometimes don't act on, and this time, the message is about calling, elevating individuals, lifting other people. And so I'm calling these short videos, these short interviews, if you will, called the elevate, the lifting. And so what I'm doing is talking to my nieces and nephews because they have a lot going on. You guys are young millennials, and you all can reach out to other people sometimes in ways that people in my generation don't seem to get through. And so you have some ideas and you have some things going on in your world that might, I hope, will inspire other people, will encourage other people. And by me, God give me this opportunity to lift you all, then you all will also be lifting other people. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. So let me just ask you a few questions, okay? So because nobody knows who you are yet. So can you just give us a little information about your education, your background, where you were brought up? Just a little background about Darrion.
Man, that's a long story. It's a lot of background. Okay, so I was born and raised in Detroit. I was educated through private schools within the city. I went to Wayne State University, graduated, aim high, go Warriors. So I graduated with a double bachelor's in business management and marketing communications. So after graduation, I worked in marketing for a couple of years with Muscle Milk. I really enjoyed it. I love that. And I always wanted to, I like to do things that involve speaking to the public. Like I'm not really a sit down at a desk kind of guy. My attention span and my personality is like very outgoing. I'm very extroverted. So I'm people oriented. I'm people friendly, and I love to talk to people and strike up a conversation. So marketing was a natural fit for me because when I was working with Muscle Milk, my job was literally talking to people, just educating people, field marketing, event promotions, sports, athletics, a lot of things I'm interested in. And to backtrack a little bit, I've played sports my entire life. So, athletics and football, baseball, basketball, weightlifting, that's always been a major part of my life, as well as entrepreneurship. Been an entrepreneur ever since I was a kid, and it hasn't stopped yet. So, I'm always trying to strive for new business ventures and, just ways to find success. And currently right now, I'm teaching at Lincoln Park. So, go Rails. Okay. And it's still kind of, it's a little bit of a deviation from what I went to school to do. But like I said, I'm very people oriented. So talking and teaching and explaining concepts and educating people, especially young people, it was a natural fit for me. And, I do enjoy the opportunity to take what I know and my experiences over the years, because I've lived a lot of life. I've done a lot of things, and it's probably more than I could, compress in a short synopsis. I've done it all. A lot. I've done a lot. And
that's awesome.
And it's important for me, and I find it important to take my experiences and try to impart it into the young generation. Just like I say, hey guys, these are some of the things that I've done. These are some of the mistakes I made. These are some of the successes I had. This is some of the information that, I had to find out going through life. And, here are these jewels. Here's this wisdom. Take it, be successful, use me as a blueprint. If I can help, the younger generation in any way, then I consider it a successful day. So, that's just a short, brief synopsis about me. And I try to keep it short, but I talk a lot. So, it's hard for me to keep it short.
Well, I think that's awesome. And, you kind of taking some of my steam out of my questions, but that's okay because I think it's important that, especially as an educator myself, some people don't know what the backgrounds are of teachers. Where do we come from? We just came out of the woods someplace and we're just automatically teachers. No, there's a ton of life experiences that go into, who we are as educators. And we bring all of that to the table. So what I heard was with the marketing piece and your business background, that's a form of educating people, right?
Absolutely.
About products and bringing making the consumer aware or potential market aware of what's great about what it is that you're trying to sell or to enhance. So from my limited experience, so I think it almost sounds like you're a natural fit as a teacher.
It really, and that's true, Auntie. It really is the same thing, because whenever I have done any type of marketing, whether it was through a health and nutrition product or technology aspect, it's literally just educating people. It's like, hey, I'm Darrion, this is what I'm doing, this is the product, and this is how the product can help you or benefit you or, improve anything that you got going on. Or, hey, here's some information about, health and fitness, especially in the health and fitness aspect, because it was already an area that I was passionate in, I had a lot of experience in. That was literally me just teaching people about health and nutrition and dietary needs and what do we need to be healthy and why this particular product fits this need. And then even with technology, it's like, hey, this is how this piece of technology can help you, and that's really all marketing is. Honestly, it's just psychology and education, because you have to educate people to have them develop a need to, either buy whatever you're trying to sell or, just engulf themselves in whatever product you're trying to market and explain. So it's really all just education.
Okay. Well, it all makes sense to me. So I kept up with everything. So and it's very exciting because you and I have never had this talk. So, I'm learning a lot of things as well. So that just makes me appreciate you more, of course. So let me ask you this, speaking of education. Okay. So, of course, there's always you've heard that there's a dearth of Black men who are educators. Of course, there are thousands and thousands of them, but, statistically, not as high, in terms of Black men going into education. One, I want to ask you, why do you think that is? Just your personal opinion, of course. I didn't ask you to do any research about it. I haven't. I just want to know what your opinion is. And two, what could we do, even in this crazy time, to encourage more Black men to become educators?
To be honest, from my experience, it's not really pushed on Black men. Like education, it's not really pushed on men in general, but specifically in Black men, it's not talked about. It's not pushed. It's not something that's really prevalent a lot. Sometimes when you're in like Detroit, for example, yes, there are a lot of, Black male teachers within the school system, but it's few and far between. And when you get out of the city, especially into like some of the surrounding suburbs that aren't necessarily the more affluent suburbs, but just suburbs in general, just your downriver suburbs, your east side suburbs and all of that, you tend to see less and less Black men in that profession. And it's hard to really convey why it's important to young Black men when they don't see anybody like them in the classroom. They don't see them in the halls. They don't see them in the school system. So it's hard to tell them like, hey, maybe education is something you might want to get into. And their first thought is optics. Well, I don't see anybody that looks like me teaching me. So why would I want to do this?
Right.
And it's not really discussed, and the norms that are pushed on Black men specifically are the regular things. You go to school, go into business, go into, maybe computers or something like that, or athletics. Education isn't really pushed heavily on Black men. And if it is, it's always something that is really, really common. It's not like, hey, you're really good at teaching your peers chemistry, or you're really good at leading the football team or the basketball team. Maybe you might want to go into education. Maybe you might want to go into administration. Not really pushed. It's not really talked about. And that's just the only thing that I can think of. Because I know growing up, I had a few Black male teachers. I could probably count on one hand. In high school, I had one. And it's funny that he is the age that I am now. And I thought like he was just so much older. But
Okay.
I know. And I think literally he was maybe 30 when he started. And in my mind, I was like, oh man, Mr. Cook. His name was Mr. Cook. And in my mind, I'm like, Mr. Yeah. And I thought he was like, mid to late 40s. And we were like, yo, Cook is how old? Like he's 30. Like what? And it's just that was mind blowing to me, because that was the first time I've ever seen like a young Black male in the school system.
Yeah.
And that's still my boy to this day. Now he's no longer in education, but we still keep in touch. We still interact. you know, he was really inspirational. But it's like,
That's nice.
it's so few and far between. It's hard to convey to young Black men like, hey, this is something you should do when they don't see anybody like them doing it.
So what do you think, you know, even if you just have an inkling of an idea, what do you think would shift the balance a little bit, you know, and try to encourage more Black men to go into education? What do you think? What do you think what could have happened to maybe have even more men like in your situation? You know, what drove you into education? You know, what turned the light on for you might be something that could be possibly you know, a spark for someone else.
Well, for me, and this is actually this is actually something that slipped my mind. My first true experience with education was in college. So I was what was called a peer mentor at Wayne State. And I love that position. I think it was like my junior year. My counselor suggested that I apply for the position, and I got the position. It was through the Development of Community Education program. And that's an alternative admissions program through Wayne State. So, you know, kids from the city or from the surrounding suburbs that may not necessarily meet the requirements for college admission, but, you know, are just like on the cusp. You know, maybe their ACT scores were a little bit lower, GPA was a little bit below, you know, school standards. They were able to apply through the DC program and receive, you know, admission. And then, you know, you just got to follow some protocols for about a year, your first year. And then, you know, you're fully involved in the university, like you're a fully admitted student, but you got to meet with your counselor, you got to take a couple extra classes, you know, alternative admissions. And with that program, I became a peer mentor. So I was in charge of a group of incoming freshmen who were in the program. I had to meet with them twice a week to teach a study skills class. And then we had study halls twice a week for 2 hours as well. So it was about a total of 4 hours. And I was responsible for, you know, keeping up with the kids, meeting them, helping them with how to be successful at a university level, and help imparting some of the skills that they needed to be successful at the university level. And I did that for about a year and a half until I graduated, and I loved it. You know, I still keep in touch with my mentees to this day. A lot of them are super successful, and I'm just so proud of them. And it was that really got me into the idea that, okay, maybe I can teach, because it was my counselor, my college counselor was like, hey, you know, you on top of your game, you know, you're personable, you involved in all these different groups. Why don't you just help, you know, younger people? And I was like, all right, well, okay. So I did it on a whim, to be honest, off her recommendation. And she was actually the head of the program. So I literally worked under her. So she was my boss. So, you know, it was really cool. And that kind of was the spark. So what I would say to get Black men in education is we need to see more Black men in education. It's kind of like a double-edged sword. Kids, and you know this, Auntie, being in education, kids got to see it. You know, we could talk to them all day, we could tell them, we could teach them, but unless they see it, it's hard for them to really understand it and believe it. So maybe different, you know, seminars, bring in maybe Black men into different schools, you know, kind of get together a group of Black male educators and just have them go around to different schools and talk. And that would probably open up the eyes of the students a little bit more, like, hey, these guys look like me. They're from my neighborhood, you know, they're from my background, they're from my block or whatever, and they're teaching. Maybe this is something that I can do.
Those are great ideas. That's a good idea. I was also thinking about something that you said was, you know, even at the college level, you know, not just coming into the maybe into the high schools, you know, kids who are on their way to college, perhaps, you know, but also at on the college level, you know, having more educators come in as guest speakers, or, you know, to get questions answered, you know, to visit different classrooms. I like that idea a lot. I remember those career day events, and you know, it would be nice to see more men step into that role of coming in teachers. It's hard because they would have to take time off for their career day, but that's an investment. That's an investment. So maybe it's something that once we get past this pandemic and career days are back, you know, maybe it's something that I'm planting this seed in you, since you brought it up, you know, to reach out to other young Black men, to come in, to visit schools during career days, to help inspire, encourage other Black youth, particularly men as well, to join the profession, to seek, opportunities in this profession. It's interesting. We'll share on another day on a private, in private time, I'll share, how I, wound up becoming a teacher. I think we have some parallels here.
Okay.
So
I don't think we've ever had that conversation either. I have some idea, but I don't think we've ever had that in-depth conversation.
I don't think so. So we will definitely have a talk about that another day, but I want to focus on you.
Okay.
And so let me ask you this. So just shifting gears a little bit. So as well as being an educator and your extensive background with entrepreneurship, you also have some current ventures going on, some side businesses, that are happening. So one I want to focus on, because I know there's a huge one with your wife, and I'm going to tag team you guys tonight. But I want to focus on something brand new that you have been doing lately, and that's a podcast.
Absolutely.
And so talk about your podcast. I know you've developed one with at least one other individual, young man. Talk about that. What's it called? You can shout it out, give the information about how to view your podcast and topics that you all, bring to the table. Want to talk about that for a couple minutes?
Well, definitely. So that's with my cousin. Me and him, we started a podcast. So we've actually, and to get to how I got to the podcast. So outside of all the other things I've done, I was a music artist for my entire 20s up until a year and a half ago.
Well, you still are.
And I still am.
I'm shout that out, because you still have videos out and on Instagram, I believe, too, right?
Definitely.
Make sure you shout that out too, because I was listening to those.
Well, I appreciate it.
I haven't seen them in a while, but I was there. Okay, go ahead, shout that out too.
Oh, definitely. So, they're on, my other cousin's page. They're all on New Culture on YouTube. So that's NEWCLTR. That's where all of my solo stuff is. But we were actually part of a group for 10 years. And, we traveled all over the US, all over Canada, Montreal, Ottawa, Quebec, Sherbrooke, like literally places that didn't speak English.
Wow.
And we were traveling all over in a van. We hop on a plane, Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, Idaho, we literally traveled over most of the continental US performing music. And that was a lot of fun. It was. And to do that with family was something special. So my cousin that I have my podcast with, he was one of our DJs. Mm-hmm. He's been DJing for years. Mm-hmm. So we originally had a podcast, and we kind of had to rebrand it. And, he called me one day. He was like, man, why don't me and you just do it? And I was like, all right, cool. I've always been on the internet making vlogs and making videos. Because before I started doing music, I was vlogging, 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, something like that. So the podcast was the natural progression. And it was something that me and him wanted to do, because we'll talk about all this stuff anyway that's going on in the world. We'll crack jokes, we'll be on the phone, I'll be over his house, and we'll just be talking. And one day we was like, yo, let's just do a podcast. Let's just record it. Like, these are things that people talk about anyway. Yeah. Let's just record it. So, we redid his basement. We got all this equipment, got the cameras, and we just started doing it. And it's called the QTip Podcast. And I have to shout out Angelica for actually coming up with the name for the podcast. Okay. Originally, it had to grow on me. I was like, QTip. I'm like, what does that stand for? It was like, quit taking it personal. And the way he and I interact. Do that. Yes, that's what it stands for. Is quit taking it personal. Okay. And me and him, when we get together and we get to talking, we'll just get to joking and making light of stuff. And, it's informative, but we have fun because me and him are goofy characters when we're together. So,
I've seen it.
Exactly. So the whole theme of the show is, we're informing and we're having fun. We're not taking ourselves too serious. So don't take it personal, because, we're not trying to offend anybody. We're just having fun and just talking about what's going on in the world. Because if you can't laugh about it, then you'll drive yourself crazy.
Okay. I love it. I love it. I've watched several of your podcasts, and so I definitely want to make sure you shouted that out, because that's the most recent venture that I know, in terms of being online and in social media, that you are into right now. And I hope it grows. I hope it really grows
I
for you
appreciate
both.
it. And Auntie, I hate to do this, but I got to take this call for 1 second. So can I take a pause for 1 quick second?
Sure.
Just 1 quick second.
Okay. All right. So, all right. So we're back.
Yes.
So yeah, so we were having a whole conversation about how your podcast got going, and
Yes.
really excited. It's QTip, correct?
Yes, QTIP. And if anybody wants to see it, go to YouTube and search QTIP Podcast. So they can just type in QTip Podcast. And it's the same for Facebook, Instagram, and we just got a TikTok as well, because everybody's on TikTok, so you got to get a TikTok. And we have a lot of things coming up. And, some of the things we talk about, I know the last one we did, we talked about the Guillen Maxwell case. And we talked about, well, actually, we didn't talk about the Antonio Brown thing yet. We're going to talk about that next week. We talked about COVID. The COVID numbers are going sky high. Mm-hmm. We talked about Young Dolph. Anything that's going on in the world, we try to cover. But we also try to do it in an informative way. We talked about Jeffrey Epstein and that whole situation. And then we actually had Angelica on not too long ago to talk about the recent unfortunate school incident at Oxford. And that was, that was a big deal. But we wanted her to come on to give the expertise of somebody who studied the events of the whole case, mm-hmm. the psychology behind what went down with the administrators and the social workers and the parents and everything. And that, to me, honestly, to this day, is probably one of my favorite episodes, because it was such an informative episode into the inner workings of the schools, because everybody was in a panic and there was a lot of hysteria going on, and we didn't know, and a lot of people didn't have any misinformation. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback from that. Everybody was like, oh man, your wife came on, she broke it down, and there was so much information I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And we try to do stuff like that. We try to cover topics that affect everybody. Mm-hmm. We try to do it in an informative way. And then of course, we have a lot of fun on there. We do funny stuff that's going on, current events. We got the videos of the day. We try to find the funniest clips, and me and him battle. And then we just have fun and we goof around. We try to inform, but we also try to entertain.
Yes.
And we're honestly ourselves on camera. If you ever see the podcast, that is honestly how he and I talk, except we got a camera running. Like, that's our conversations with a camera.
Well, I think that pretty much is the definition of authenticity. So, yeah. And I have seen several of the podcasts, as I mentioned before, so I definitely highly recommend it. And so with that, with all of that background, you've already again snatched my question from me. So I was going to ask you what's coming up next. So you've already covered that. And then we have to, probably meet again, because there's just so much going on. And, it's almost like trying to eat a whole cake, and you can only eat one slice at a time. And I think maybe I had 2 or 3 slices. So, but it was all good. And I love the range of the things that you have, talked about with and shared about yourself and about what's going on now. And so I look forward to us meeting again. And then maybe I'll try to come up with some questions that you can already, move ahead of me, being a novice interviewer. But at the same time, it's so good to talk to you. And I look forward to us meeting again. And if you want to shout out anybody or any specific, thing right now before we close, you got the floor. What would you like to share, in, let's say, in 30 seconds or less? What would you like to share in closing?
In closing, I would like to tell everybody to live life as much as possible. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow is not promised, it's not guaranteed. Like we talked about, I've done a lot of things in my life, and I just turned 34, and in my mind, I still have a whole bunch of time, God willing, to try to do a lot more things and just experience life as much as possible. Take time to hug your loved ones, your friends, your family, whoever is around you in a circle. Embrace them, let them know how you feel, because tomorrow is not guaranteed, it is not promised. Try to experience as much as you can, live as much as you can, take as many opportunities to live every day as you can. And I firmly believe that our mission as human beings is to help the next generation coming forward. Even if it's on a small scale, plant seeds and try to help other people.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Love the optimism. Well, nephew, thank you again for your time. And I promise that this may have been the first one, but this won't be our last meeting. So and definitely we'll have that one-on-one talk.
Definitely.
We promise. And so I am going to let you go because, I have to catch up with your other half.
Mm-hmm.
so since I have you both in one place, I have to take care of two birds with one stone, right?
Definitely.
So you have a blessed evening and go call your wife. Tell her I said I want to talk to her too. So
I'm gonna get her to
tell her get in here. All right. Love you.
All right, thank you.
Bye.